Welcome in, everybody, to the Auburn Undercover podcast, Auburn Undercover YouTube channel. My name is Nathan King, joined here by Jason Caldwell. We're at Hancock Whitney, I believe is the name of the stadium here on South Alabama's campus. It is the 2024 Senior Bowl. Auburn's got 4 guys here. It's actually their most since 2018. Got the 3 DBs, Jalen Simpson, Nehemiah Pritchett, and DJ James, and Marcus Harris holding it down on the defensive line. So here to talk to those guys. Tomorrow we will talk to Hugh Freeze. But Jason, late last night, as we record this, I guess, here on Tuesday, Auburn finally finished up its defensive coordinator search. I don't even remember how long it ended up taking, but for the past week and a half, DJ Durkin had been a name that had been near the top of the list, we had felt like, and it's obviously not official by Auburn yet, but you reported it yesterday that he's set to be their new DC. Yeah, no, you're right. It happened late on Monday night. It had been something that had been kind of back and forth in the works for a while, and we talked about it really from the get-go that DJ Durkin and Chris Kiffin were the 2 really guys that Hugh Freeze was focusing on. Obviously hired Charles Kelly, and I think they would have been that, hey, if Charles Kelly's a defensive coordinator, you want to go hire another position coach, I think that would have been okay with them too. But they're like, let's go see if we can get the guy that we want. And they wound up getting the guy that they wanted in DJ Durkin. And so a guy that has tons of experience in the Southeastern Conference, obviously been at Florida most recently, at Ole Miss and then at Texas A&M. Talked to some folks that have worked with him on staff, and they're like, hey, this guy gets after it, really good football coach. And so I think, you start looking at it defensively for Auburn, and continue to recruit, get really good players, and you bring in a guy that I think scheme-wise fits what they want to do. But this is a guy that obviously is a guy that has worked well in this league and is somebody that they believed in and get the job done. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about on the way up here, doesn't feel like their scheme will be that much different from what they ran under Ron Roberts. The personnel they have in place right now seems like it's going to be, kind of the same fit in 2024. Yeah, you mentioned Durkin. I mean, that was a guy that we had talked about was in the running for Mizzou's DC opening. Of course, going back to Nick Saban retiring, that was sort of what everyone talked about, was that, hey, Saban was sort of set to maybe interview him, kind of had him targeted as a defensive coordinator after Kevin Steele retired in Tuscaloosa. So you mentioned it, a guy who's been around the league a little bit, obviously was away from things for a little bit after what happened in Maryland, came back in and is now in his 3rd stop in the SEC. As Christian wrote on our site this morning, really good recruiter as well, that has a history of bringing in top guys. And I think that's a theme on this staff now as we sort of zoom out and look at all 10 assistant slots that they filled. Lots of recruiting potential. Obviously, they did a good job in year 1 with the staff that they had, but you feel like maybe this group, especially with a guy like Charles Kelly, definitely has a lot of potential. Yeah, again, run into some familiar faces while we're here. And I talked to some guys that were on former Auburn staffs that were here, kind of seeing their guys now, and said, they're asking me kind of how is it? I said, I think it's a really good staff. I think it's moving forward. I said, I think it's a staff that understands the most important thing, and that is talent acquisition. There's nothing more important than getting a bunch of really good football players to help out the offense and defense. And every one of the guys is like, yeah, absolutely. There's no secret. Yeah. And that's the thing. There is no secret. You go get really good football players, get more of them, build that depth, and that's how you get good on both sides of the ball. Now, you have to scheme and do some of those things too, but boy, you got to have the players. And so I think Hugh Freeze said, look, we're going to go out and recruit. We're going to hit the state of Alabama hard. And obviously the Southeast, DJ Durkin's a guy that's had success in Florida and other places. So you open it up a little bit with him at Weston McGriff. Obviously Charles Kelly in the state of Alabama doing some of the things, Mississippi ties you have. You start looking at it, and this is a staff that has a lot of ties in the South and Southeastern Conference area. Yeah, as you're finished out now, the 2 coordinator hires that they did make, we talked a little bit about him previously, but Derek Nix comes over from Ole Miss. That's a guy who has a lot of familiarity with Hugh Freeze. He obviously fills in that running back slot that Cadillac Williams left vacant after he stepped down on the staff. You mentioned Ken Austin as well. It's funny, only 3 new faces on this staff, even though they did turn over a handful of positions, because you had Crime Dog Weston McGriff come back because Ken Austin was already on that staff last year. So you were kind of talking about it today, the feeling of continuity. Even though you had some turnover, you feel like, especially with a guy like a Derek Nix, like a Ken Austin, Charles Kelly is a guy who has a lot of experience. You're sort of hoping that you can carry over what worked last year on both sides of the ball and improve, especially on offense. They've got to find a way to get the passing game better. And I'm interested to talk to Hugh Freeze here tomorrow about him, potentially having a lot more control over this offense. Yeah, I think you look at it offensively, I think that is the key. You got guys now across the board. Marcus Davis is the only guy on offense who hasn't worked with Hugh Freeze as a coordinator. You think about that. Ken Austin worked with him at Liberty. But you think about Derek Nix, obviously those guys together. Jake Thornton worked with Hugh Freeze, but he also worked with Derek Nix. So those guys have been together. I was been with both of those guys. Yeah. There's a lot of connections, and I think when you start talking about
hey, look at from a 10,000-foot view Auburn's offense last year. One of the biggest things is that you got, Hugh Freeze and this staff trying to learn Philip Montgomery's terminology for his offense, but you kind of want to do the same things, but it's called a little different. That's not going to be the case anymore. It's going to be, look, here's what we're doing. This is what I used to do. This is what we're all going to do together. So it's going to, I think, force the offense is going to have to learn. The players are going to have to learn a little bit more terminology to kind of get off. But the coaches are going to go, hey, we're all connected. I think that's a big deal when you start talking about it, because Hugh Freeze told us last year, look, I know what I want to do, but it's hard to fix it when you don't know what it's called. And so it's not second nature. It's going to be second nature again for that entire offense. I think that's a massive deal when you have the expectations and the knowledge of this is exactly what that guy wants. This is what we want to do on offense. This is exactly what he wants to do. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt we'll record a whole nother episode tomorrow after we talk to Hugh Freeze. But, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened, obviously, since the end of the season. I'm interested to talk to him about that play calling on offense. We expect Derek Nix to have a role in that, but by and large, it is going to be, much more of his system this season. Obviously, it was a system last year, but he's going to have much more of a hand in the play calling and in the offense overall. Obviously, if DJ Durkin ends up being something that's official from now, and then tomorrow on Wednesday, obviously we'll be able to talk to him about that as well. The transfer portal, obviously this sort of window has ended. We're now heading into spring practice. We think we have a good idea of what this roster is going to look like. What kind of holes do they want to fill after the spring? As Freeze has talked about since the beginning, a lot of that depends on the guys that leave. Quarterback is the big question mark. Are they going to continue to kind of poke around there? But let's talk a little bit about these guys that are here. Jason, 4 guys here at the Senior Bowl for Auburn. A little bit less than an hour. We'll get to catch up with some of them. I guess, kind of breaking down each of these guys, what do you think they need to do in the draft process? Because each of them, I think, are some really interesting draft prospects. I think maybe DJ James is sort of the highest ceiling kind of guy. Jalen Simpson is also a guy you see maybe top 150 type players. We've been watching them here for the past couple hours. What do you want to see from these guys this week and I guess throughout the draft process?
I think, the important thing for these guys here is jump up, be competitive, do those things. Marcus Harris, it's probably easier for a defensive lineman to stand out. Can you rush the passer from the interior? I mean, that is worth its weight in gold in the NFL. Can you be an interior pass rusher? Marcus Harris has shown some of those things. So can you do that and probably hold up against a double team? Because they're going to go, he's not a true edge guy. Can you play inside? I mean, we've seen guys in the NFL that do that at 290, 300 pounds, but it's hard. Can he do those things? You look outside, I mean, like Jalen Simpson, ball skills. You look at him, can they hold up and say, hey, can you be physical enough to play that role in the NFL? That's going to be the thing. But I think a coverage guy, potentially maybe a nickel for him could be, maybe that spot. Then outside, how much you run, turn, ball skills, find the football, do those things for those corners. But it's 4 guys that have given themselves a chance by being here to earn some stripes this week.
Yeah, and a couple guys as well in Pritchett and DJ James who are close to home.
Yeah.
In this game, that always, it carries a little bit extra meaning for them. Yeah, watching the DBs today, those kinds of drills are really competitive, especially when they go one-on-one. And we were looking at the video earlier of DJ James having a really good rep against Johnny Wilson out of Florida State. So, of course, you've got the talent level on both sides. And y'all were watching Marcus Harris go one-on-one with these offensive linemen. And so, there's a long way to go in the draft process, but the Senior Bowl is always sort of a fun kickoff. I think all of these guys have combine invites except for Marcus Harris.
Yeah, and that could be something this week where you go, hey, we want to see you run. Exactly. We want to see you do those things. You've shown it this week, so that's a possibility for a guy like Marcus Harris.
You've got your pro day, but sometimes, more often than not, you're going to have a lot more eyeballs on you here. Scouts coming from all over, and so we're excited to catch up with those guys. Jason, unless you have anything else, I will say look forward to Wednesday at Auburn Undercover. We're going to catch up with Hugh Freeze. Again, lots of ground to cover with this new staff, with roster, with personnel. Made an off-the-field hire that was really good coming over Will Redmond from LSU. So catching up with Freeze about all that, catching up with these guys. Today we'll have it all covered for you guys over at auburnundercover.com. There's our signal to get off the podcast. So appreciate you guys joining us. For Jason Caldwell, I'm Nathan King. We will catch you guys later.